Years ago, I went to this restaurant, and one of the options that I had to get with my meal was cornbread. And this cornbread had rosemary in it. And I never had rosemary cornbread before. And I was confused, and I was like, maybe this won't taste very good, because it just didn't sound like a good combination at the time. But the waiter told me that it was amazing, and so I decided to give it a try to see what it was like. So when the cornbread came out with my ribs, I decided to give it a taste first before I even ate my ribs. And I can tell you that this was the best cornbread that I ever had. The waiter was right. And the cornbread was sweet and moist, just like I make mine, and I'm going to show you how I do it. Now, I think the best way to make a cornbread is the sweet and moist cornbread that's more like cake than really cornbread. I'm not a big fan of the one that's more savory. This is the type that I like. Now, how I started is in a bowl, I've got 1 1/4 cup of cornmeal, 3/4 cup of flour, 1 cup of sugar, and to my dry ingredients, I'm adding a 1/2 teaspoon of salt, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, and a 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda. Baking soda and baking powder are added for leavening, but the baking soda is added because we need to counteract the acidity from the buttermilk. Now I'm just going to mix all of the dry ingredients together to make sure that they are all distributed evenly throughout the mix before I add in my wet ingredients. Now I'm going to add in my wet ingredients. I've got 2 eggs that are beaten. Then I'm adding a 1/4 cup of oil. I'm using canola oil, and this is going to add moisture to the cornbread. The next ingredient that I'm adding is 1 1/4 cups of buttermilk. And after I add in the buttermilk, I'm going to add in 1 stick of melted butter that I conveniently melted in the microwave. Now, when you melt in the microwave, I like to put a paper towel over it because, if you ever melted butter in the microwave, it can just blow up. So then the next thing I'm going to add are 2 tablespoons of chopped rosemary. And I'm going to make sure I get all of that rosemary in there. Now I've got all the ingredients in the bowl, so I'm just going to mix it all together. I want to mix it so that it's not lumpy and all of the ingredients are combined. I want to make sure that I don't have any dry pockets of cornmeal in the mix. So the next thing that I did was put my cast iron skillet in the oven at 400 degrees to get hot. And the reason being is because I want the cornbread to have crusty edges, and the best way to do that is to make sure that it's going right into a hot skillet before it goes into the oven to bake. And the best time to put it in the oven to heat up was while I was actually making the cornbread mix, because that only took me just about 5 to 10 minutes to do, and that was just enough time for the cast iron skillet to heat up. Now I'm just going to take a tablespoon of butter and put it around the bottom and the edges of the pan so that it adds a little flavor, but also so that the cornbread doesn't stick while it bakes. And while I was doing that, I let the cornbread batter rest for about 5 minutes or so. And what that'll do is it'll let the mixture absorb all of the dry ingredients, and it'll also give the leavening agents time to work. And after I let it rest, I just give it one more stir before I put it into the cast iron skillet to go into the oven. Got my batter in the pan, and now it's ready to go into the oven, which I have preheated at 375. So it's going to go in the oven at 375 for 15 to 20 minutes. Just check it with a toothpick to make sure that it's done before you take it out. And when it's done, you should see it golden brown. Those edges should be nice and crispy. So I'm going to cut a piece out so we can see what it looks like on the inside. And you can see from the outside those little pieces of rosemary that got baked in. Now, by the way, you cannot use dried rosemary for this. It has to be fresh. I tried dried and it just does not work. And you can see that edge is nice and crispy, which is just what you want it to be. And in 30 minutes, you made the best cornbread you will ever have.